Ever find yourself wanting to step outside the everyday, maybe into a place where you can almost, touch history?
Oh, absolutely.
Like wandering through buildings that have seen the very start of Minnesota.
It's a powerful feeling, and that's exactly what you get at the Sibley Historic Site. It's in Mendota Heights,
Right, Mendota Heights.
and it's not just a collection of old buildings. It really feels like a portal to a key moment in time.
Yeah, for anyone looking for an outing that mixes, let's say, exploring with some genuine learning, this site really delivers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a chance to connect with the past in a very real way, walking where the key figures of Minnesota's early story actually walked.
And what makes it so compelling, I think, is how this one spot captures so much.
Hmm.
The fur trade, setting up the territory, the complex early interactions between cultures.
Yeah.
It's all there.
It's like a microcosm of early Minnesota.
Exactly. A remarkably concentrated piece of our history.
So, in this deep dive, we're going to explore the Sibley Historic Site's rich history. We'll hit the highlights, what makes it a must-see, and share some fascinating details we found.
Yeah, we've looked at info from the Minnesota Historical Society, historical documents, things like that. Reliable sources.
Right. The goal is really to give everyone the key insights to make a visit there truly rewarding.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Location, 1357 Sibley Memorial Highway, Mendota.
Got it.
And right off the bat, the big claim. This is where Minnesota government essentially began.
That's huge. So it wasn't just some random spot. It was a central place for the people and events shaping Minnesota before it was even a state.
Precisely. Think about the conversations, the decisions made inside those walls.
Wow.
And it's good to know it's looked after carefully, right?
Yeah.
It's a partnership between the Dakota County Historical Society and the Minnesota Historical Society.
Which also means if you're a member of MNHS or DCHS or the Sibley Friends Group, admission is free. That's a nice perk. Okay, so the heart of the site, that has to be the Sibley House itself.
Without a doubt. And consider this. It's known as the oldest private residence still standing in Minnesota.
The oldest. Still standing. That's amazing longevity.
It really is. Construction was between 1835 and 1836. And what's interesting, John Mueller led the project, but he had over 100 laborers.
Wow.
Yeah, a mix of white workers and Dakota people. And they used local limestone, quarried right nearby.
Resourceful. And this was Henry Hastings Sibley's home?
Correct. He lived there first as a bachelor and then later with his wife, Sarah Jane Steele.
You can almost picture the house changing, adapting over that time.
You can. His original business office, for instance, eventually became a parlor, more family-oriented.
Right.
And as his needs changed, they added on a kitchen, dining room, extra rooms, a new office.
Ah, the new office. That sounds important.
It absolutely was, because here's the key thing. It was in that office that the actual plans for the Minnesota Territory were drawn up.
No kidding. The blueprint for the territory right there.
That's the spot. And get this, for a short time, in May 1840, it even functioned as the temporary territorial headquarters. Governor Alexander Ramsey actually stayed there.
So a private home basically served as the first Capitol building briefly.
In a way, yes. It shows how these lines were blurred early on. But the story doesn't stop when Sibley moved to St. Paul in 1862.
Okay, what happened then?
Well, the house had quite a few lives after that. St. Peter's Catholic Parish bought it. It was used as a school, even a convent for a while.
Interesting.
Then it was leased out, and unfortunately, it kind of fell into ruin. It was even used as lodging for, railroad transients.
Oh, wow. Quite a decline from territorial headquarters.
It really was, and this really highlights the need for preservation, doesn't it? Because in 1910, thankfully, the St. Paul chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution,
Did they dare?
yes, the DR, along with Archbishop John Ireland, they saw its importance and stepped in to save it.
That's fantastic. A real rescue mission.
It was. DR chapters from all over Minnesota pitched in for the restoration, and it opened to the public June 14th, 1910.
What a great story of community effort.
Absolutely. And then much later in 1997, the DR passed ownership to the state of Minnesota,
Okay.
and the Minnesota Historical Society, MNHS, continued managing it in partnership with the Dakota County Historical Society. That was the setup as of 2015, ensuring its care continues.
Good to know it's in safe hands. Now, there are other buildings there too, right? Like the Faribault House?
Yes, right next door, basically.
Yep.
Built in 1839 for Jean Baptiste Faribault, another big name in the fur trade.
And it looks different from the Sibley House.
It does. It's more of a colonial style,
Mhm.
made with local yellow sandstone, but the front is this really striking red sandstone. Gives it a unique look.
And its history. Was it just a house?
Well, Faribault's grandson, George, actually turned it into a hotel.
A hotel in Mendota back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine who stayed there. River travelers, priests, teachers, explorers, government folks.
Mm.
It must have been quite the hub.
Really paints a picture of Mendota's early importance.
Definitely. But like the Sibley house, it also fell into disrepair later on.
Oh.
But again, preservation efforts saved it. The State Highway Department started work in 1934, the DR finished it, and it opened to the public in 1937.
Another success story then. Okay, what else is on this site? The Dupuis house?
Right, that's on the southeast corner,
Yeah.
built a bit later, 1854, for Hippolyte Dupuis.
And who was he?
He was General Sibley's private secretary, so closely connected.
And this one's different again, isn't it? It's brick.
Yes, brick. And interestingly, the bricks actually came from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Milwaukee, really? Shows the trade routes developing?
Exactly. Now, this house also changed hands. Sold in 1869 to the Fee family, who owned it for a long time, until the Minnesota DR bought it in 1924.
Okay, so the DR acquired this one too.
They did, and in 1928 they remodeled it into the Sibley Tea House. Apparently it was very popular for decades, operated right up until the 1970s.
A tea house, that's charming. From private home to social spot.
And today, it serves a practical purpose again. It houses the offices for the Sibley Historic Site itself, and also importantly, the Mendota Mdewakanton Dakota tribal community.
Oh, that's significant. Shows that ongoing connection.
It does. And just quickly, there's one more structure, a fur company cold store.
Like a refrigerator.
Sort of, yeah, for preserving furs. It dates back to 1843. It's one of the 4 limestone buildings there. Just another tangible piece of that fur trade era.
Got it. So 4 main historic buildings.
Right. Sibley, Faribault, Dupuis in the cold store.
We've mentioned Henry Hastings Sibley so much. Maybe we should touch on just how influential he was.
Good idea. Because he wasn't just the guy who lived in the house. His career was incredibly varied.
He managed the American Fur Company's regional operations.
Right. He was also an author, a territorial delegate to Congress.
And then, of course, Minnesota's first governor.
Exactly. But it's also important to acknowledge the complexity of his life. His personal connections, like his relationship with Red Blanket Woman, a Dakota woman, and their daughter, Helen Sibley. He acknowledged her and provided support, which adds another layer to understanding him in the times.
Right. These figures weren't one-dimensional. He was also a successful businessman later on, right? Investments in railroads, lumber.
Yes, quite diverse interests. And historically, he was central to those 1851 treaty negotiations.
Which were hugely significant and controversial.
Deeply. And later, of course, he commanded U.S. troops during the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862 and the expeditions that followed.
A very complicated legacy there.
Extremely. He even served as president of the Minnesota Historical Society for a few years in the late 1860s.
So visiting the site isn't just about architecture, it's about engaging with this really pivotal, complex figure.
Absolutely. And the great thing is, you can engage directly. The site is open for tours. You can go inside these restored buildings.
Step back in time a little bit.
Yeah, and learn more about the fur trade, Sibley's role, the U.S.-Dakota War. It offers context you just don't get from a book.
And just walking the ground, seeing those 4 limestone buildings, Sibley, Faribault, Dupuis, the cold store, it gives you that physical connection to the past.
It really does.
Okay, so if people want to visit, what's the practical info? Admission costs?
Right now, it's $10 for adults, then $8 for seniors, veterans, active military, and college students, and $6 for kids aged 5 to 17.
And kids under 4 are free?
Under 4 are free, yep. And like we said, free for MNHS, DCHS, and Sibley Friends members.
And also Blue Star families.
Yes, Blue Star families get free admission on site between Armed Forces Day and Labor Day.
Good to know. And where do people get tickets?
Through the Dakota County Historical Society. That's who handles the ticketing.
Okay. And if they have questions?
Best bet is to call them at 651-452-1596. Or shoot an email to Sibley Historic Site at mnhs.org.
Perfect. 651-452-1596.
And actually, there's a special event coming up next year that sounds really interesting.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's called Mendota After Dark, Vanishing Landmarks at Sibley. It's on Friday, April 18, 2025, from 6 to 7 p.m.
Vanishing landmarks? Sound intriguing.
It features Doug Oman. He's a photographer and historian who focuses on Minnesota's disappearing architectural and cultural sites. He uses his photos and tells their stories.
Oh, that does sound fascinating. A different perspective on preservation.
Exactly. And they'll have drinks and light refreshments too, so a chance to mingle with other history buffs.
Nice. How much are tickets for that?
$20 for general admission. But if you're a member of DCHS, MNHS, or the Friends of the Sibley site, it's discounted to $15.
Okay, $20 or $15 for members, and probably need to book ahead.
Yeah, they say space is limited, so best to pre-register. You can do that by phone or email using the same contact info we mentioned.
Good tip. So wrapping this up then, the Sibley Historic Site really feels like this unique, accessible window into Minnesota's beginnings.
It really does. It goes beyond the textbooks, offers that tangible experience. You can stand where history happened.
Yeah, for anyone looking to explore and learn, those aha moments are definitely waiting there. You can quickly get a really solid understanding of this key location.
We definitely encourage planning a visit. Go explore the buildings, walk the grounds, soak in the stories.
And definitely check the websites, Minnesota Historical Society or Dakota County Historical Society, for the latest hours and event info before you go. Things can change.
Always a good idea.
So as you walk through this place, where so much of Minnesota's early story played out, maybe think about what other stories those old stones might still whisper, you know? What else can these places teach us?
Great thought to end on. The history is still unfolding, in a way.